Hi, I'm Heather, and I am a very unlucky person because I have an inborn peculiarity. It lies in my appearance, which is constantly changing. You may not try to remember my face because tomorrow I will be a completely different person, and I will never be the same as now. It all started in the maternity ward where I was born. Mom picked me up, hugged me, and remembered my face forever. Now imagine her shock and indignation when after some time, she found a completely different baby in the room. My mom got really hysterical. She was shouting that someone had replaced her child, asked to call the police, the clinic's management, and even the governor. The doctors were also shocked, and no one could understand what had happened. Even greater shock awaited my mother the next morning when she saw a new baby instead of the one that had been replaced before. The department staff made a helpless gesture, and at some point the police conducted a genetic test from my mother and me, which showed that I was my mother's daughter 100%. The same tests have been carried out for another 5 days, during which my appearance continued to change. As a result, it became clear to everyone that I was the daughter of my parents. It was just that something was wrong with me. For my parents, this was a huge shock. The thing is that we are used to loving appearance. I understand now that you are indignant and might even say, "Hey you, one's appearance is not the main thing. We love a person's soul." Well, so it is. But in any case, our feelings are attached to the appearance. This is how our brain works. And when in front of us we see someone who is completely different from the one who we love, despite understanding that this is the same person, our brain starts protesting. Well, and now let's get back to my story. Can you imagine my parents' feelings? They didn't know what kind of girl they loved. What is their daughter like? What does she look like? Although my parents' love is absolutely unconditional, they did have a difficult time. Every day I woke up with a new appearance, and it shocked them. It took them some time to accept the new me. And as soon as they got used to me, my appearance changed again. However, a psychologist made a good recommendation to us soon. He suggested my parents make a small tattoo on my body, which would be recognizable and unique. As a result, my parents' love was supposed to be attached to this mark on my body. They hesitated for a long time, but finally agreed to make the tattoo. So, at the age of 2, I became the owner of the moon, which was right on my temple. Of course, it hurt. But the main thing is that after that, the love of my parents really became attached to this tattoo, and they stopped getting used to my new appearance every day. The next problem was self-identification. I was growing up and did not understand what I was like. Seeing new people every day in my reflection wasn't really a lot of fun. Well, in fact, being a human without appearance felt like not being a human at all. It was like being a ghost. No one knows you, and you yourself don't know yourself. At school, I started having big problems because no one recognized me. And I guess when my classmates, along with teachers, saw me every day, their brains just exploded. No explanation was working. For everyone, I was like an alien or a monster. That's why school became a very scary and horrible place for me. How come, you may ask? After all, you have lived with such a feature all your life, and why did everything become so bad at school? The answer is simple. Previously, only a few people knew about my peculiarity. These were my parents, relatives, and several family friends. But at school, I could no longer pretend to be different girls. At that time, everyone already knew that I was me and just considered me terribly weird. However, in spite of everything, I studied very well. Trust me, in the conditions which I found myself in, it was very hard and morally difficult. But thanks to the natural abilities, I acquired knowledge very easily. Well, yeah, that's the paradox I faced. I don't know how long this terrible situation would have lasted if the new student, Penelope, had not come to our class. Since none of my classmates wanted to share the desk with me, she had to sit next to me. We talked a little on the first day, and she seemed like the best person in the world to me. Was it because I've never really talked to anyone before? The next day I came to school with a different appearance and said hi to Penelope. She looked at me strangely and said that another girl had been sitting next to her the day before. Without hoping that she would understand me, I decided to try to explain everything to her. As a result, Penelope became not only the first person with whom I could communicate in a normal way, but also the first person who understood me. Her reaction was like, "Really?" Damn, you're even cooler than Drake. Let's be friends, huh? Can you imagine what I felt after hearing these words? And after that day, my life began to change rapidly and dramatically. Penelope introduced me to her friends, and since she was an authority in her company, none of the guys even thought of mocking or humiliating me. The situation was the same at school. Penelope became a leader in our class, and she was elected a monitor. And since I am her best friend, the teasers who used to think that I was an alien and a monster suddenly calmed down. They either stopped noticing me or tried to make friends with me. But I didn't need these insecure people at all. Do you remember me saying that I was a good student? Soon after Penelope appeared in our class, I received an offer to participate in a competition for talented and creative students. And the most important thing was the winner's prize, which was $100,000. To be honest, I didn't expect to be able to outperform more than 5,000 participants. But Penelope was constantly encouraging me and said, "You can do it. You are the best." So, in the end, I agreed and applied for participation. Many rounds of the competition were ahead of me, and I easily passed one after another. I was very happy and really proud of myself because I managed to reach the final level, which meant that I was already better than the 4,500 participants who dropped out. But I still didn't expect to receive the main prize because there were many smarter and more talented guys in the competition. After all, the main thing is not winning, but taking part. Now, imagine how shocked I was when I was informed that my final work was recognized as the best one, and the prize of $100,000 was mine. At first, I couldn't believe it. Then I was gripped by panic because I didn't know what to do with that huge amount of money. And only then did I feel the euphoria because of victory. I was looking forward to getting this money and starting to spend it. But there was one problem. The organizers of the competition informed me that in order to take my prize, I would have to come to the awards ceremony, where there would be many journalists, cameras, officials, and ordinary spectators. I was told that I would have to go on stage and say at least a few words. And I wasn't ready for this at all because I am terribly afraid of the stage, public speeches, and crowds. And this is not just fear, but real horror, because in the end, I was even ready to refuse the prize so that I didn't have to go on stage. Can you imagine that? But in this situation, Penelope came to my aid again. She said that in any case, no one knew how I would look on the awarding day and offered to attend the ceremony instead of me, adding that she was not afraid of performances at all. It was perfect for me, and I was delighted with her idea. Everything went according to the plan, and I even watched the awards ceremony from afar. I wanted to get my hands on the money as soon as possible. Penelope coped with everything perfectly, and on stage, she behaved like a real actress. This evoked a new wave of admiration in me. After all, I have a really cool friend. And then there happened one thing that no one had expected. Just after receiving the prize, Penelope escaped through the back door. As soon as I realized that, I was gripped by panic and started calling the police. On the same day, my parents and I wrote a statement against Penelope, and she was detained. I thought that justice would soon prevail, but that was not the case. It turned out that when visiting me, my false friend stole my password from the platform that held the competition and replaced my details with her own ones. But I didn't even notice it because I used only the nickname and personal number of the participant. On that day, I was completely disappointed with people, and Penelope became the rightful owner of my money. Do you believe in friendship? Give your answers in the comments, click on the thumbs up button, and subscribe to our channel. I never would have thought that it was so hard to do nothing. Time is dragging on like rubber, and the brain is messed up because of emptiness. If you have ever dreamed of a carefree life where you do not need to do anything, then you better drop this stupid dream. My name is Rhonda, and I want to tell you about how I fell into the trap of my own laziness. I just agreed to an experiment that also drove me crazy. So guys, here's my story about how I was doing nothing for several days and at the same time was earning money. As for me, I am a very lazy person. In fact, I have a lot of talents. I draw perfectly on a graphics tablet. I have a developed imagination, and I constantly create comics in my mind. I can easily learn foreign languages, and I am also good at writing fiction stories. The only problem is that I'm too lazy to develop all this. When I sit down to draw another picture using Photoshop, I become even too lazy to draw lines, choose colors, and paint shadows correctly. Once I started writing a book in my mind. I created the whole world and its characters. But as soon as I got down to business, I lost enthusiasm on the 5th page. I also tried to learn foreign languages several times, but I didn't go beyond the basics. And that's the story of my life. In fact, it never worried me. But it bothered my parents, who always considered me a promising child who could reach heights if I stopped being lazy at least. They were constantly lecturing me and saying that I would ruin my future this way. But I just brushed it off. They are always exaggerating things and dramatizing. I've always believed that it's possible to make money without breaking a sweat. Well, why not? TikTok is full of bloggers who do nothing, but at the same time, they earn millions. Why are they able to do it, but I'm not? I lived with this motto until a turning point occurred in our family. Due to the crisis in the factory where my parents worked, their salaries were cut. There they started having strikes, mass layoffs, and even lawsuits. But the authorities could do nothing. They just said that there was no money available. My parents could not quit because they had me, as well as several loans. They asked me to help and to get some part-time job to work after classes, since all the money was spent on food and paying off loans. I even found a job in the cinema, but I didn't manage to stay there for a long time because at some point, I became too lazy to go to work. At first, I was making excuses and saying that I had some fictitious diseases, and then I just stopped caring at all. So, I was fired. Well, I didn't really want to earn a living. I was just used to spending my pocket money, and I was totally okay with that. Why do I have to go somewhere else after classes? Why can't my parents find another job for themselves? These questions were bothering me when I was lying on the couch in the living room, while my mother, after a work shift, was preparing dinner for us. It didn't even occur to me to help her. Oh, what a fool I used to be. My parents didn't say anything to me. They probably realized that it was useless. Or maybe they were ashamed to ask their teenage daughter to toil and moil at work, as she already had enough problems with her studies. But one way or another, I still decided to earn some extra money. In fact, I even found a wonderful vacancy. This was some kind of experiment, and participation in it involved generous payment. The requirement was to do nothing for a whole week. If a person could cope with this, they were supposed to earn as much as $7,000. Wow, this was totally okay for me. It was literally a dream job that required lying lazily and making good money at the same time. But there was an addition which said that if a person gave up on one of the days, then they would not receive anything. Pfft, this is a breeze, I thought, and responded to the vacancy. And I was hired. After signing all the papers, I was taken to a spacious room where everything possible could be found. A TV, a powerful computer with a whole collection of video games, a PlayStation, the latest iPhone model, and even paints with canvas, and a whole library of books. In short, there one could have great fun. But I was forbidden to use all of it. I could only lie, sit, go to the toilet, wander around the room, and that's it. Well, all right. I was okay with all the conditions. The first day went well. I didn't even notice how it had passed. All day I was lying on the couch, dozing, thinking about something, then dozing again, and then went to bed when the hands of the clock were already showing midnight. But the second day was actually much harder. I no longer wanted to just lie down because my whole body was numb. It's good that I was allowed to warm up as well. Otherwise, I would have definitely died from the heaviness that I felt in my muscles. But after warming up, I realized that I did not know how to hold out doing nothing for more than a few hours. Everything around was attracting me. Suddenly, I wanted to read the entire library, play, or draw. Well, I was even ready to clean up there. But instead of this, I was sitting on the sofa and staring at one point on the wall, sometimes glancing at the clock, waiting for midnight to come to go to bed. But time seemed to have stopped. The clock hands were moving really slowly, and I was gradually going crazy with idleness. But this terrible day still came to an end, and I went to bed thinking about what to do tomorrow. And I was doing nothing. I was just walking around and looking at the small details of different objects. I even tried to drag out breakfast, lunch, and dinner so as not to sit around doing nothing. I could just eat. But it didn't really save me. In the end, I burst into tears as I was very lonely and sad. I wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk at least with someone, with my friends and parents, whom I missed terribly. By the evening, I'd counted all the books on the shelf, and there were as many as 48 of them. Also on the shelf, there were 36 paint cans and 32 comics. And I also counted all the flowers on the wallpaper. There were 2,036 of them. After such a discovery, I began to seriously worry about my sanity. It seemed to me that I began to slowly go crazy. On the fourth day, I began to realize that I used to behave like a complete idiot towards my parents, whom I refused to help. They worked and came home tired. After that, they were doing all the household chores while I was just lying on the couch. My thoughts vanished when the computer turned on. At first, I thought that I had completely lost my mind and was imagining all this. But that was not the case. It really started working. Oh no, are there ghosts here? I started shivering and began to look around in panic, hoping to see objects flying in the air. But everything turned out to be much simpler. The people who carried out this experiment could remotely turn on all the devices. These were they who turned on the computer. Did they think I was going to fall into this trap? As soon as I turned away from the computer, I was constantly trying to turn towards it again, and even unconsciously came up to it in order to at least press a button on the keyboard or move the mouse. And then, my favorite video game, The Witcher 3, started there. Oh no, I wanted to play my favorite Witcher so much. I was fascinated by the screensaver and constantly tried to sit down in a chair near the computer and enjoy the game, but I had the willpower to resist it. I was lying on the couch with my eyes shut, listening to music from the start menu and almost crying. The experiments did not stop there. The next day, a man came into my room and began to draw right in front of me. There was the second easel nearby, and I really wanted to paint or do something at least, not just sit on the couch and stare at the clock, the ticking of which was terribly annoying me. Once I almost broke it, but unfortunately I was not allowed to damage the equipment. I could smell the paint, heard the alluring noise of the brush on the canvas, and even came up to the easel and grabbed the tube of paint. At some point, I didn't care about anything, from money and poverty in my family to the days wasted in this box. I wanted to paint. And then I pulled my hand sharply. Well, I have already been through so much. The last thing I needed was to give up. 5 days were behind, and only 2 of them were ahead. It would be a shame if I had given up at that point and lost all my progress. I got back to the sofa, hugged the pillow, and watched with envy as the person was drawing. I couldn't sleep even at night because I had a lot of energy. I closed my eyes for only a couple of hours, and then again was spending my day aimlessly. Because of this, I had a headache, my thoughts were often messed up, I could barely keep my eyes open and felt sluggish during the day. But at night, I had some strange influx of energy. This night was especially difficult, as I was able to sleep only half an hour, and in the morning, breakfast and migraine pills were brought to me. I tried to sleep during the day, but I failed again because a man was invited into the room. He sat down next to me and began to read Harry Potter. Oh no, I indicated in the questionnaire that I had not finished it, and the person was actually reading the last pages. I was so eager to know how the story of the characters ended that I was ready to snatch this book from him and read everything myself. At home, I stopped just in the middle because of laziness, and at that moment, I wanted to reread it just to keep my mind busy. The man closed the book and looked at me shocked. "What a story!" he exclaimed, and handed me the book. I grabbed it, started flipping its pages till the end, and then suddenly threw it on the floor. They almost succeeded in disrupting the experiment, but I am not a wimp. Only 1 day and a half was left for me to spend in this box. I'm not going to risk everything for the sake of some book. Actually, the last day was not as terrible as all the previous ones. Although time passed much slower due to the anticipation and impatience to finally get out of there. But I was just lying and even managed to sleep for a few hours during the day. But at night, I was constantly wandering and watching the clock, waiting for the moment when it would show 8 a.m. And then time X came. I finally got out of that little hell. You have no idea how glad I was to see my parents. I hugged my mom and dad tightly and began kissing them, saying how much I missed them and how much I had changed. I didn't care about being tired. And on the same day, I found a job in a cafe to help my parents with money. I also tidied up the whole house, which I had never done before. Usually, I only cleaned my room and living room, and did it really poorly. But then I was rubbing almost every corner until it started shining, and this brought me real pleasure. My parents were shocked while watching me because I didn't let them do anything. By the way, I even stopped dropping everything that I was doing halfway through and brought everything to the end. As a result, my picture in Photoshop was finally finished. I wrote not 5, but 15 pages of the book and wasn't going to give up. I was even learning languages every evening for an hour. I got a real thrill from this, and I tried not to be as lazy as before anymore. And so it happened that I earned as much as $7,000 for idleness. But in the end, along with the money, I received something more valuable. That is a life lesson. Laziness does not lead to anything, only to stagnation. You can do nothing, but not all the time. It's better to move forward and develop. Would you be able to do nothing for a whole week? Give your answers in the comments. Click on the thumbs up button below the video and share it with your friends.